Good morning. Welcome to Books at the Bottom of the Stairs. My name's Lorene. Today I'm going to talk to you about a book that I have been really conflicted about because I don't know how to do it without spoilers. I think that my conflict comes around the ending. And so how to talk about the ending without giving quite a lot away, I haven't been able to figure it out. So if you're looking forward to reading the book this one, Legendborn by Tracy, Deonn, just turn off because I don't think I'm going to be able to protect you. Okay, Legendborn is a fantasy book about Bree. She has recently had her mother die in a car accident, and her dad and her are managing to keep, reasonable relationships. That's not the main issue in Bree's life. The main issue is she just really wants to get away from her small town. And so at 16 years of age, she and her best friend, April, pretty sure it's April, decide to put in an application form at the local university to go for, they call it early university or early college. So at 16, she's off to a university setting, but because she's considerably underage, it's supposedly a little more restricted, so I don't know. There was my first little quibble. I don't know if that actually exists, and it just seemed kind of a little illogical to me. Why send a 16-year-old to university? What did the university setting offer that a high school setting wouldn't? From reading the book, I would say really nothing except for the setting. So why not set the setting, adjacent to an institution? The institution served to be camouflage for the Arthurian legends, which is central to this whole plot. So many generations ago, the descendants of Arthur and the Round Table traveled to America, and so their line of descendants have flourished more or less in America as opposed to England. And the original business of the Arthurian table to prevent harm coming to the world is still their mandate. Everything's magical. So they've used the camouflage of the university to allow for these lineages to continue and to operate in secret, to have research around what they're doing. Their magical powers, of course, are not privy to the general population. And we've got healers and warriors and people that can transform. And so it's a very complicated scenario with the Arthurian lineage. And I couldn't even begin to describe that. It takes the whole book to really sink your teeth into that part of it. It's a very white, it's very, very white privileged society that we're entering into. Bree, as you can see from the cover, is a beautiful black girl, and she has some magic of her own. Now, okay, first spoiler, back in about 7 generations ago, Bree's ancestress was raped by her owner and became pregnant, and turns out that this owner was part of this Arthurian lineage. So we've got this complicated situation wherein the raped ancestress has made a deal, a blood deal, wherein there's only ever one female per generation that carries on the magic. Now, their magic comes from a completely different kind of pathway. It's sort of root earth magic. It's not voodoo, but it's like of the earth, of the plants, of the energy lines, and so on. What we encounter across these two different magical systems is that effectively whatever it takes to reach into the world of magic is what it takes. So if you want to create yourself some kind of hierarchy of knights and kings and all blah blah blah, go right ahead, you go for it. But if that's not what you have access to, you're going to come up with a different system of magic. And this system of magic has been fractured 1,000 different times between enslavement and families being disrupted in Africa, and then whatever takes place in the continent of Africa as well, many civil wars and so on. So they do not have the opportunity to create this kind of tightly woven scenario. So we've got these two different kinds of magical systems, and we really become familiar with the Arthurian side. We're not so familiar with the African black movement magic. So that's a disappointment. But what happens with this rape is that a female child is born, and she goes on down the descendants. Well, doesn't it turn out that because it was an Arthurian lineage person who raped this woman, the child in all the generations that follow is actually part of the lineage, except no one noticed, because for sure it never crossed their minds that a black person would be of any consequence. So we've got that kind of a storyline going on. The other part of it is, it's such a dense book. There are so many reasons and motivations and characters that you really can't pull it apart without having to explain other parts of the story. So it's a highly complex novel. It is well written. You know, I loved it right up until sort of the last two chapters, I would say. And I think it was the last chapter that just kind of sent me over the edge. Because as these two magical systems through Bree and through, his name just went out of my head, this Nick is the potential next Arthur, the next King Arthur, should the world need to be saved. So he's sort of he's kind of like Prince Charles. He's just waiting for something to happen, and then he gets to be kingy. So we've got these two encountering each other, falling in love in 17 minutes, which, quibble number 2. I don't mind a love story in the midst of all of these adventures, but give me something to hang my hat on as far as the love goes. They're both cute. They're both kind of holding secrets from each other. They both have engaging smiles. That seems to be basically the premise for falling in love, is their engaging smiles. There's a third person who comes in who, is he Lancelot? Is he sort of Guinevere, except maybe in a male form? Is he Merlin? There's like a whole lot of ambiguity around this character, and he's actually the more interesting character compared to Nick. And he has a very tightly woven engagement with Nick and his dad, who was the previous future Arthur. Like at a certain point you age out. So like, see what I mean? There's just so many trips and snares and everything around this whole story that it's virtually impossible to unpack. Okay, adventure, trial, tribulation, adventure, disaster, going to get your bones fixed, that kind of thing. Happens once, happens again, maybe it's happening a third time. And each time, everybody's secrets are becoming more and more known to each other. So we end up with a group of people who never wanted to trust each other and are sort of forced into trusting each other. And one or two people actually do trust each other. Parents get involved, the regents who we never actually meet become involved, and we get to the ending, which is where my nose goes completely out of joint, and I don't even know how to talk about this without you having read the book. So it's one of those weird discussion points. How do you discuss this with the ether when there's nobody to bounce back again? Okay, rhetorical question number who knows what. The ending is where Bree, having been an unknown descendant of the Arthur lineage, actually is the true inheritor. So, conflict, Arthur rises up to, be known again because the world is about to be annihilated by evil demons and so forth. He doesn't inhabit Nick like everybody's expecting. He inhabits Bree. Okay, that makes sense to me as far as the whole storyline. That's kind of a logical progression. But here's the part where I lose my shit. Bree is a young black girl, 16 years old. Her ancestress was raped by the previous Arthurian god, or not god, king kind of guy, who never became king. And all of a sudden we've got Arthur inhabiting Bree. she doesn't just get his powers, she doesn't get his spot in the pecking order. He actually inhabits her. And I'm thinking to myself while I'm reading this, how is this not rape? How is she not less or as unempowered as the ancestress? Okay, yeah, she's got Arthur's powers, so maybe she's therefore not empowered, but I really found it appalling that this white man's will is being superimposed on the 16-year-old girl. Like, okay, so my book club read this book, I made the point, and oh, whoa, shouted down, because Arthur's power is seen to be like a safe place, a unifying thing. He's the king who unified Britain. He's always on the good side of the story. So it's not a bad thing to be inhabited by Arthur. But I'm thinking, no, wait a minute. I'm a black girl. I don't want to be inhabited by anybody. Like, I've spent generations being forced into compliance. Get out of me. So this is where I just don't understand the storyline. I was going, okay, I wasn't quite sure. I thought the root magic would kind of become supreme over the Arthurian. That's what was my expectation, that somehow this fractured, disintegrating magic would coalesce and rise up, and some kind of, I was expecting some sort of legendary figure to come forward out of this. Yeah, if she was going to inherit some kind of powers from an ancestor, why not her black side? Why not her African legend side? You know, but we didn't really get any of that. And as the book progressed with that whole side of or that whole part of her inherent character and culture is just not really moving anywhere. All right, well, there's going to be book 2. And I suspect there'll be book 3. Maybe these questions get answered. Maybe she starts to rebel against Arthur. Her ancestors are part of her internal landscape now. So she's got a grandmother who doesn't hold any punches. So maybe she and Arthur are going to duke it out in her head. That ought to make for some sort of psychotic adventures. But I'm not sure I want to read it. Okay, so also, I should point out, I hate reading the first book in a trilogy if the others aren't published. That's a personal problem I have with fantasy. I need all the books to be out there because, just like, you know, I was reading, where'd it go? Claire de Lune. I read the first book, loved it, went out, got the second book, was patient, waited till it came in on the library hold system. Book 3, was very worried about what was happening in book 2, rushed to the library because it was on the shelves, and instead of waiting for the library hold system, I grabbed it off the shelves like a normal book patron. So I'm in the middle of book 3. I read almost 300 pages in a day. I was just so engrossed. I like that kind of immersion into a trilogy. If I really, really like a book, I just want to, you know, dive in and swim my way through it. So who knows when book 2 will be out. I think someone said that it would be out in 2022. Well, that means 23 or late 23 or something for book 3. I'm going to forget everything. So I think this book, it's like I'm so ambivalent. I want to give it a 0 because I hated the ending. I want to give it a 4 because I really liked the adventures. So people in my book club felt that it was very slow and that the sort of trials and tribulations were very extruded, so they gave it a 3. So this book's all over the place. So if you're looking for something to really mess with your mind in terms of your expectations, this is a good book. I think I'm going to give it like a 3.5, partly because of my quibbles with the characters. It did take a little bit of pacing time, although you kind of needed it in order to really fully understand the intricacies. The author had to spend a lot of time world building, as it were. Yeah, but I can't give it any more than a 3.5 because, and I guess I'll have to do some research and see what the author has to say about how she's ended it. Maybe there's something I'm missing. I hope I haven't offended anyone with my take on the ending. The ending offended me. Maybe it'll offend you. I don't know. Anyhow, that's one of the things that we encounter when we read all over the place, right? We're not always meant to be left feeling comfortable at the end of a book. I hope all your reading dreams and adventures to continue to come true. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.